أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. All praise is due to Allah, the Exalted. We praise Him. We seek His help, His guidance, and His forgiveness. We seek refuge in Allah from the evils within ourselves and the evils of our sins. Whomsoever Allah guides, for they seek guidance, there is no misguidance for them. And whomever He rightfully causes to be led astray, there is no guidance for them. And I bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah alone. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, peace be upon him, is His servant and final messenger. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in the Noble Quran what is translated as, O you who believe, O believers, be conscious of Allah as He deserves and do not die except in a state of submission to Him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us that, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us firm until the day that we return to Him. Alhamdulillah that we were given life this year, not only to Ramadan, but also to the blessed days of Dhul Hijjah. And Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah that we were given life to the greatest day of the year, the day of Arafah. And usually, this time of the year, many people around the world would be somewhere else. Many people around the world would be completing their rituals at Hajj. And just last year, I want to share with you very briefly a small incident that took place. Something we experienced that seemed miraculous. On the day of Arafah, it was extremely hot, as is usually the case. And almost abruptly, suddenly, it started to rain profusely. To the point where people who were sleeping or napping were tired at the end of the day of Arafah. Suddenly everyone was energized and awakened and everyone left the tents. People went outside soaking in the rain. And they were raising their hands, making dua and crying. And you'll ask people who have been to Hajj for 10, 20, 30 plus years about their experiences on Arafah. It was one of the most unique experiences that day. And as it's raining and people are crying and their hands are up making dua, accessing what we saw that day as the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's very interesting now, 1 year later, with all of this pandemic shutting down much of the world and many people not being able to go to Hajj this year. It's very interesting to reflect on the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we celebrate, which we look forward to. Where many people realize then, it's as though the very last Hajj before it was open to the world was one in which we saw even more of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a reminder before the storm that was to come, before the pandemic that was to lock people down, to prevent people from Hajj. And may Allah reward all of those who are intending to go to Hajj, and to prevent us even from the houses of Allah all around the world. It was as though it was a necessary reminder before this pandemic that the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always there. You may see it only in something you perceive to be mercy. You may see a lot of rain on a hot day and say, this is the rahmah of Allah. When a pandemic occurs, we forget. But the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is here now as well. The mercy of Allah is always accessible and always to be celebrated, always to be sought. It is not only in times of ease, it is not only through certain signs. Even during this pandemic, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encompasses all of the believers. And you have access to that mercy despite the pandemic. You have access to that mercy even if you cannot go to Hajj, even if people cannot pray in the masjid. You have access to the mercy of Allah, for it is close to those who do good. Inna rahmatallahi qareebun min al-muhsinin. It is close to those who are righteous, those who are pious, those who look for it. So as a reminder, with all that we see of this pandemic, by Allah, His mercy is accessible now as it was accessible last year. And it will always be accessible for those who seek it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy is greater than anything we can imagine. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is greater than our perception and interpretation of world events. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is greater, and therefore we say throughout these days and we emphasize Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, wa lillahi alhamd. My dear brothers and sisters, we always reflect on mercy and tied to this in these blessed days that we celebrate, and we are happy on these days. The dua that you made on the day of Arafah, and the dua that people make and made all around the world on the day of Arafah, putting their heart hopefully into it and their soul into it, hoping that there is qubul, hoping there is acceptance. The acceptance comes when you start changing something, when you start acting upon it, when you find in yourself renewed dedication to Allah. That is a sign of acceptance, that Allah is greater than everything around us. Allah is greater than our distractions. Allah is greater than everything that takes us away from Him. And that is why we say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Don't only say it in the prayer as part of the prayer, but feel it as well when you say it. Don't only say it during these days of Dhul Hijjah, especially these next 3 days we celebrate. Don't only say it for the sake of saying it. Feel it when you say it. Allah is greater than everything else in our lives. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is worthy of dedicating ourselves and our lives to Him. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, wa lillahi alhamd. So the second point was the point of dua of Arafah. Act upon it and find in yourself renewed dedication moving forward. And number 3, the last point. Reflect on the mithaq, the covenant you took with Allah. And this is a topic that surprisingly we find many people are not aware of. Do you remember the day that you made a covenant with Allah? Do you remember the day in which before you were even given a body, you testified to Allah's oneness? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us of that incident. If we find all of the collected reports, more than 30 reports in Al-Tabari from the companions about this day and this incident, and combined, I am paraphrasing, the story is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after He placed Adam alayhi salam on earth, near the plains of Arafah, extracted from Adam alayhi salam all of the souls of his offspring until the end of times. All of the souls of the progeny, all of the arwah, including us on that day. This is a physical occurrence that took place. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord? And we all, and all human beings testify, قالوا بلى شهدنا أن تقولوا يوم القيامة إنا كنا عن هذا غافلين. We testify, yes, Ya Allah. So that we cannot say on the day of judgment, we did not know about this. This mithaq is the one that is now embedded not as a memory, but in your heart, in your spiritual heart, part of your fitrah. فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا. This is the fitrah that brings our hearts back to Allah. This is the fitrah we should be working to purify. For many people around us, may Allah protect us, it has been corrupted for them. This is the fitrah that celebrates that covenant. How else can we find ourselves returning to Allah and celebrating His mercy in this life and in the next life without recognizing that occurrence? This is the covenant we all made. Let us find ourselves celebrating it by acting upon it. Let us find ourselves celebrating it by bringing it to other people who may need it. Let us find ourselves celebrating this mithaq by bringing happiness into the hearts of others and bringing La ilaha illallah into every home around the world. Let us celebrate the mithaq that we took by seeking the mercy of Allah, for it is nearby. Inna rahmatallahi qareebun min al-muhsinin. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who celebrate that mithaq by acting upon it. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us for our shortcomings. Seek forgiveness from Allah. He is the oft-forgiving, the ever-merciful. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. My dear brothers and sisters, as we celebrate on these days, and we should be celebrating on these days, despite any challenges or hardships we are facing, and even our brothers and our sisters who are facing oppressions locally and globally are trying their best to celebrate on this day. However, do not forget them from your dua. Do not forget that despite the pandemic, before and after such a pandemic, many of our brothers and sisters don't have access to the houses of Allah. So we are not saying celebrate and forget them, rather celebrate what we have on this day. And this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Bring happiness into the hearts of your children, into the community, into your family's hearts. Bring happiness in general to the atmosphere around you, in person and online. These are days to celebrate, and these are days to glorify Allah. These are days to seek closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is why we continue to say loudly and frequently throughout these days and throughout the year, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, wa lillahi alhamd. I want you to reflect on a closing note on the happiness that we should be seeking on the days of Eid, the happiness we should be bringing into our homes, especially in this country living as a minority. Our children should absolutely feel the spirit of Eid. They should absolutely feel happiness on this day. And as we are reflecting on the happiness that we seek and the happiness some people find even being able to come and pray with social distancing guidelines, let us reflect as well on the parallel, the happiness of the akhirah that we seek, the happiness of Jannah. وَجَزَاهُمْ بِمَا صَبَرُوا جَنَّةً وَحَرِيرًا. The reward for their patience in this world is Jannah, and the rewards within it of silk and everything else of paradise. طِبْتُمْ فَادْخُلُوهَا خَالِدِينَ. The people of Jannah are told, peace be upon you, salamun alaykum, you have done well, so enter forever. And the people of Jannah are praising Allah. Alhamdulillah alladhi hadana. Alhamdulillah alladhi sadaqana wa'ada. Alhamdulillah alladhi adhaba 'anna al-hazan. Praise be to Allah for all of these blessings. Without Him, we would not have these blessings. So reflect on that reunion, that moment in Jannah in which there is peace and happiness and bliss eternally with no hardships and no challenges, and seek that happiness by being happy in this world for the blessing of La ilaha illallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those who constantly seek His mercy. Number one, we seek the mercy of Allah. Inna rahmatullahi qareebun min al-muhsinin. Number two, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept the dua that we made on Arafah, and to give us all that we ask for a fight of this life and the next life, and to make us act upon it. Allahumma ameen. And number three is the covenant that you took with Allah, the covenant we all took with Allah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to renew our hearts, rededicate ourselves to the promise and the testimony that we gave, to act upon it and to bring it into the hearts of other people around us. May Allah allow us to be happy in this life and on the day of judgment. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Wa lillahi alhamd. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us for all of our shortcomings, the major and the minor, the ones of the past, present, and future. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to relieve us of this pandemic and our hardships all around the world. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to lift this pandemic from around the world. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant shifa for every person who's seeking shifa. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to aid our brothers and sisters all around the world and allow us to meet Him in a good state. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma ighfir lil-mu'minina wal-mu'minat wal-muslimina wal-muslimat al-ahya minhum wal-amwat. اللهم اغفر لوالدينا ولوالد والدينا. اللهم يا مقلب القلوب والابصار ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. اللهم ارزقنا حسن الخاتمه واجعل خير ايامنا يوم نلقاك. اللهم انصر الاسلام واعز المسلمين. اللهم انصر المسلمين المستضعفين في كل مكان. اللهم فرج الكرب عن المسلمين في كل مكان. اللهم فرج الكرب عن المسلومين. اللهم انصر عبادك الصالحين في كل مكان يا ذا الجلال والاكرام. اللهم ارفع عنا البلاء والوباء يا ارحم الراحمين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وأقم الصلاة.